hole in their squad, in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you say about twisting the knife, but, I'd never, ever wish anything on, anybody like this. I mean, and it was just such a freak accident as well.
Yeah, it's scary how freak an accident it was, really. And I really like Mossy. He's, every photograph you see of him, he's got a big smile on his face, hasn't he? Even going through this, which is heartwarming, it really is. And you might not like me for this, Sarah, but quite a soft spot for Hull KR, because they were actually a fantastic team when I first started watching Rugby League in the early 80s. They were the standout team of the time, so they've always stuck in my mind because of that.
I mean, do you want to respond to one of the standout teams, Sarah? You said, did you? Because Hull FC were quite good as well at that time. And I think Lee and Fev were quite good too. And then no one remembers who else was good, because Wigan were so great for the next 10 years.
Widnes as well.
Yeah.
Early 80s, they were good.
Also, on the 8th of April, Total RL reported that Salford great Tex Evans is in hospital with the coronavirus. Evans, who played for the Red Devils in the 80s and 90s, was in an intensive care unit as he battles against COVID-19. So good luck to Tex in his sort of fight against the virus, and hopefully overcomes it.
Yeah. 9th of April, it was announced that Australia's NRL competition will restart on the 28th of May if coronavirus restrictions are eased. The league was stopped after just 2 rounds of the 2020 season, but Australian Rugby League bosses say they want to give everyone involved in the sport some certainty. We haven't finalised what that looks like yet, ARL Commissioner Wayne Pearce said. Why we want to firm up a date is to give certainty to players and their schedules, clubs and thousands of people who are out of work through clubs, and millions of fans. It's a mark for everyone to work towards that's associated with the game.
I suppose we'll jump straight into what happened on the 10th of April and then discuss that a bit more, because BBC Sport then reported that Australia's Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Paul Kelly, questioned the ability of the NRL to return by the 28th of May, given the coronavirus precautions that are in place. The resumption would see games played behind closed doors to help regenerate funds after the lockdown, but Kelly is concerned about the continued threat of COVID-19 spread and has asked for patience. He says, I don't think they are a law unto themselves. Some of the players and coaches may think so, but they're part of society and they have a part, as have we all, to support not only safety for themselves but for all of us. We all have a place in this, and if we loosen the social distancing measures at the moment, it can have implications down the track. Now, I was reading as well today, I think the whatever the head of state for Queensland, whatever their role's called, she was saying that she isn't going to ease up any travel restrictions for the teams that are from her state to be travelling interstate and doing that, as things stand based on their intelligence at the moment. So obviously this hopeful 28th of May certainty that was not certain, even in the way the statement was worded, really, seems maybe slightly optimistic, would be my take on it at this stage. And I'm wondering if some of the fallout that's going on around some of the television contract situations is kind of pressing the NRL to making decisions that aren't actually the most sensible decisions for their players, for their clubs, for society, because they're thinking purely about the pound of the TV money rather than the dollars from the TV money, rather than actually what's best and what sort of example they need to be setting as the leading sport in that country. That's my take on it. I don't know if you guys have any different takes. Sarah, do you think it's a bit optimistic?
I think everything is still so up in the air that I just don't see how you can say about trying to put a date on it, especially one that is relatively soon. Yeah,
I mean, the coronavirus hasn't struck quite as significantly. Obviously, in Australia, they had longer to prepare for it, and it's different, I guess, circumstances there with the way it is, that compared to some of the areas in China and Central Europe and some of the Middle Eastern countries that have been hit badly by it as well. But it's still, for them to remain like that, they need to keep restrictions in place. Do you think, David?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think coronavirus is having such a devastating effect on our daily lives, and sadly, people are losing their lives over this. I think any date or any planning, it's too early to do it. It's too early. We're still going through a lot as a society. As you say, it's a little bit different in Australia, but a lot of the sentiments are the same. I just think we need to keep our powder dry, be open-minded, and make sure everyone remains safe, well, and hopefully we'll all come through it, and then we can work it out afterwards. There'll be a way. We'll work it out. There will be a way forward with it all. No point rushing and putting people at risk if we don't have to. So, yeah, I just think it just seems a bit early to come up with a date. It might be an aspirational date, something to work towards, but I'd just be open-minded personally.
I like the idea of having plans and milestones in place, and maybe, like they say, if they can start on the 28th of May, then the competition will look like this. But if we can't, we have a contingency, which is if we start on this date, it looks like this. And I think that might have been the way to maybe make this come across, rather than make it seem like such an aspiration, get people's hopes up that you're going to get this live sport, but at the same time put people at risk potentially of something that we haven't, like you say, fully understood yet. It seems a little bit irresponsible, even though I like the idea of some sort of planning being put in place.
They need to exercise a bit more caution, I'd say. Just a little bit more caution. And I say it's fine to have aspirations and try and generate some hope, but just with caution.
I think the other thing is, okay, so we're going to start matches on the 28th of May. What does that mean for training? Because you can't just throw them back into it, even with whatever they're doing at the moment on their own.
No, exactly. And that, it gives a date, doesn't it? But it doesn't talk about... It's not realistic in the current lockdown environment that they're operating in. That date's achievable because the players won't be able to get back into training, let alone actually be able to go to venues and play against each other as it stands. Yeah, you're right. You are right.
I think
totally.
Once they can train together, I think they'll be playing. I don't think we'll have much lead-in time. There's too many games to get through. I think once they deem it safe to continue, you might have one training session. They might be back on the pitch playing. It might be that quick. If it's safe, they'll want to get going. If it's not
in the
safe,
NRL,
they can't
that applies
play.
even more so, doesn't it, as well? Because they're happy to play behind closed doors because it's the TV money that drives the club's revenues more so. Whereas in the Super League, we'd need to be playing in front of audiences, you'd suspect, or some sort of way. People talked about pay-per-view. I'm not sure how fans would feel about that.
I think the difficulty is as well, a lot of fans, sorry, this is moving on slightly, but a lot of fans are still paying, season passes by direct debit. To then ask them to pay, and the Sky contracts as well, and then to ask them to pay for something else on top of that in pay-per-view, I think is a bit rough, especially when, a lot of people are out of work at this time.
It'd be ludicrous to expect, like, people who come up with those ideas are just thinking about their own pockets, I think, because it's just ludicrous to expect fans who are being very understanding and supportive of their clubs. I don't know many fans, if any, that are going to be going to their clubs asking for their season ticket money back. However, if the club then asks them to pay for something else, that's a different kettle of fish. And all of a sudden you're driving away fans when we need to be bringing more in.
Yeah, I think Hull have been a bit cheeky. They've released a new range of clothing, which maybe was always going to be released at this time, but, to start throwing that at people as well at this time. And I know that they need the money, but on the other hand, so does everyone else.
Is there not a way they could figure that out, though? I'm sure there's a way forward with all that. You can work through some of those issues by, if you've got a season ticket, you don't have to pay per view. It's only if you don't have it.
That would be introduced.
Of course,
yeah.
But
so
it's not the clubs who are suggesting.
As well.
It's not the clubs who are suggesting the pay-per-view. It's an agent who wants to line his pockets and wants his players to get paid full pay sooner rather than later, so then he can have done them more deals and get their 1st of the May deadline in place so he can start working. So it's a different...
Is it purely for that, though? I mean, is it not... The sport as a whole needs to try and secure its future. So it's not just the players, and the players are major key stakeholders in all of this. So, yeah, they need an income as well. The clubs need an income. So if there's a way of keeping all your stakeholders happy, your fans, your TV rights, your owners, agents, players, I'm sure there's a way we can work through it to make it work for everyone. And if it doesn't, then you just don't progress with that. You go back meet again and find a different way.
It's just difficult at the moment, isn't it, to sort of have any sort of plans. And from a fan's perspective, if anyone is expecting fans to double down on their commitments to clubs outside of what they can afford to do, I just think, and we are the fans podcast, I think that's taking the piss. And I think people are suggesting that are taking the piss out of the fans, and they need to realise that their players don't get paid if fans don't go and watch matches. That's all I'd say about people making those suggestions.
But I didn't think it'd come across like that. If it did, then I'd fully agree with you. But I didn't think it'd come across like that. I felt it came across a bit more around trying to support the whole game rather than just players.
Well, hopefully there's a government support coming, isn't there? That seems to be potentially announced this week, which will be something that's a positive. That's we'll see how that works for everyone. There's also kind of talk now about the season getting extended more so, and definitely in the NRL this is the talk as well. It'll run through, so there'll be no Ashes. So then you start talking about things like the season running later into the winter. So we talked a little bit about 3 matches a week, and we certainly weren't fans of 3 matches every week. We acknowledge that it may happen on the odd occasion to catch things up if we want to fit the cup in as well, for example. But what about the season pushing out at the expense of internationals? How would you feel about that?
All of these things are potential solutions, all of them, and I think someone raising the potential of pay-per-view at least gets people thinking and talking about what may happen, what could happen, and how we can support the game as a whole at the top level and all the way down to the amateur game as well, all through the league. So, I'm open to any idea. It's sad that it looks like the international games may get pushed out, because I'm a massive advocate for internationals. I prefer to watch an international than the club game, and I know that's quite rare within Rugby League because it's seen very much as a club sport, but I'm a massive fan of the international game, and I want to see that played at the highest level every year. I'm looking back at second row, I was looking back at the full tours that used to go ahead with a lot of sadness that we don't have that anymore, and I think we've lost a lot because of it. But all these are potential solutions, and there will be a way. We can figure it out. There will be a way. If we get support from government, we push the league back a little bit. All these are potential solutions that can help us.
I just wonder who's looking at a solution that doesn't involve digging back into the same well that is us supporters, because that's most of those, like that pay-per-view solution in particular, and the 3 games in a week solution in inverted commas as well. I think all those things rely on the buy-in of the existing support base, who are the people who spend the money, and I'm not sure the existing. I don't think that is there, that support, which I just think weakens the sport actually, rather than is a solution to save the sport. I personally,
I don't support 3 games a week. I just think it's too many. Two's tough on the body at this level. So I don't support 3 per week. I think extending the league is a better option. I'm not a massive fan of the pay-per-view, don't get me wrong, I'm really not. As a short-term solution to bring the game back 2 or 3 weeks before we can get crowds back in, that might be an option. I wouldn't see it as a long-term option or for any longer than that, really. But if it gets a few league games played a couple of weeks before we can all go and watch, then it might help out at the end of the season.
The more I think about it, a lot of people like myself already pay for a subscription service to their club to watch old games or to watch highlights of games, interviews, behind the scenes footage and stuff like that. I don't know, do Hull FC run a subscription based service like that, Sarah? I know Hull KR do. I know Salford do. I know they do.
Yeah,
so most of us pay that already, so I don't suppose anyone can come and ask us to pay more for a one-off game. So I just think it, like you say, people are trying to come up with ideas, so every credit to people for trying to come up for ideas, and ideas are there to be sort of questioned, I suppose. We're not really throwing an idea forward at the moment. I'm trying to think of one, I promise you I am.
Well, I think
the problem is there's just so many uncertainties out there at the moment, that it's really hard to come up with what is a feasible and sensible suggestion, because we don't know.